it on me. Okay, so welcome.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, recording in progress. That's to let you all know that this is recorded. If you are speaking and your camera is on, you will be on camera. This will get edited and it will be on YouTube. So it's up to you whether you're willing to do that. And like I was saying a moment ago before we hit record, I love to see faces. I like to put a face to the name as much as possible, probably because I'm pretty much a very visual person. And I noticed I tend to remember names more if I can see a name tag and put name to the face and see the face with it, So this is kind of like us with our little name tag down there in the corner. So this is our, what's that?
Would you like to do some work on that?
Yeah, no, not really. I find it, it's kind of nice as I get older. It's one of the, what do they call it when you get older? I forget. Anyway.
That's it. That's what they call it.
Yeah, that's what they call it. You forget. So this is our monthly free webinar, and we might go slightly over tonight because I have an amazing guest presenter tonight. I don't do that real often, but I'm going to start doing it once in a while, more and more. And before we start, I want to do introductions, and want to mention also that this is also a chapter meeting for IACT IMDHA and for the HEA, which is the Hypnosis Education Association of Florida-based not-for-profit organization. Very short chapter meeting, and then we will dive into targeting pain with the amazing Dan Cleary. So let's do introductions. You already know who I am. I'm Patty Scott. This is Up Hypnosis Institute's monthly free webinar, 7:30 to 8:30, last Wednesday or third Wednesday of every month. So, Anne, can you just introduce yourself and where you're from?
Anne, and I'm in Palm Harbor, Florida, and I enjoy all these different seminars that you put on.
Thank you, Anne. You're a regular, and I'm so happy to see you. And you're my neighbor. I'm in Palm Harbor, Florida as well, which is Tampa Bay area for those of you who may not know that. Nice weather here most of the time. Judy.
Judy Cosentino. I'm from New Jersey. I am a hypnotist, and I studied medical hypnosis with Patty, and I've done a lot of work before with Dan. So
very good. Thank you. So you're a wise student. You're a wise adventurer. I am a perpetual student as well, and I've studied a lot with Dan every chance I get. How about you, Phyllis? It's your first time, you said.
Yes, it is. So my name is Phyllis Fisher. I'm presently in Tallahassee, Florida, which is in the panhandle of Florida. It's an interesting place because we're 5 minutes from Georgia, but the state of Florida is 1,000 miles long. So we're at the very top there. And I am a professional hypnotist and doula. I have been teaching hypnobirthing for almost 20 years, and I'm also a hypnobirthing trainer. So I'm training women all over the country and all over the world to be hypnobirthing educators. And the other thing that I do is wonderful because my mentor, Joan Goulding, with the Goulding Method Sleep Talk for Children, I'm a consultant and I'll soon be a trainer for her as well. It's a wonderful program, and Nicholas usually comes and presents at the IAC conference. He's from Hungary, and so you might be familiar with Nicholas Curry. Yeah, so I'm pretty busy.
Very nice. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you, and hopefully you'll come often, and we'll get to see you and interact. And
I look forward to it. Thank you, Patty.
Talk about the conferences coming up. There's some in Florida. There's some other things going on.
Yeah,
so
keep me informed.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, welcome. We're very happy to see you, Jan.
Hey, Patty. I'm Jan Bird. I live in Loxahatchee, which is just outside of West Palm Beach, and I've been missing for a few months, so I'm glad to be back. And I'm an integrative life coach and a certified stress management consultant, and do Reiki. And like you, a perpetual student, there's always something new to learn. So I'm trying to learn more about hypnosis, and I'd really like to learn a little more about NLP and tapping. So I'm, just glad to be here.
Here comes those connections already, right? Right before you got on, Jan, I was speaking with Judy, and she is going to a tapping summit that she goes to. I guess you said you go every year to that.
Yeah.
And so maybe you two can connect. That's the other thing I like to do is connect people here, interesting. And of course, NLP to me is the close cousin to hypnosis. I can't imagine doing hypnotherapy without including what I've learned through the NLP community, because, you know, it grew out of hypnosis in many, many ways. So there you go. Doesn't matter what you call these things, right? If they work and if they help you to do your job better, what difference is the label if you just incorporate everything that helps? Whatever ritual, whatever type of different technique, you know, you can call them techniques, but it's all about what the client wants and what's going to help them get what they want, you know, what's going to help them get inside of themselves and tap into. Speaking of tapping, see, I was a tap dancer in my prior career, so when you say tapping, my brain goes in two different directions now.
But it's the same tapping.
It's the same tapping, and it was very, very therapeutic. Let me tell you, great for the rear end to keep your legs tight.
The foot has nerve endings that mirror every part of the body.
There you go.
So when you're tapping, you hit on the ball of your foot. It's your
That's right.
Yeah. Back.
All that dancing and yeah, all that dancing I did and all that singing. Now I know about the vagus nerve. You know, when I was singing, I was stimulating my vagus nerve, and Peter Blum was talking about that on World Hypnotism Day. And I go, you know, it really is performing. It kind of covers a lot of the bases there. That's all the announcements. Now we're going to get back to, I'll clip that part out. And now we're going to continue with someone I've known for, I think it's been 22, 23 years. I met him a year or two before I left California. The same place I met Michael Watson, and the same day, the same place.
In a bar.
In a bar. This is the story. I met him in a bar with Michael Watson, and I was with my ex-husband, who was already my ex-husband by then. And we started hypnosis together because we became best friends once we got divorced. It really worked out really well, actually. So anyway, it was at the American Board of Hypnotherapy conference in Newport Beach, California, I think is where it was, right? Yeah, Newport Beach, California. And there we are in the bar, and I met Michael Watson and I met Dan Cleary, and that's before I knew I was going to be in Florida. And within a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, I ended up in Florida. And ever since then, I've spent a lot of time studying with both of them and partnering with them as we're doing now. So without further ado, I'm going to just let Dan take it over. He can tell you, if you don't know his history, you've got to hear the story. And hopefully you will share a little bit of that with them tonight, Dan.
Oh,
so take it away.
I get so bored with the stories. I'm really more interested in your stories and your experience with pain relief. And you notice that I use the word pain relief rather than management. And I think this is, you know, as hypnotists, I look at hypnosis as a language that we use rather than a set of techniques. And so for me, the language that we use is it's core. And people, I work a lot. I live with chronic pain. I have nerve damage. I was in a motorcycle wreck in my anniversary is March 28th. It will be 46 years since my wreck. I went off a motorcycle and doing great flying, but I botched the landing. So, and I have what's called a brachial plexus avulsion, which is the collarbone broke on my right side and tore up the nerves in my shoulder and down into my arm, and also pulled on the nerve bundles and ripped 3 or 4 nerves out of my spine. It is a 24/7 electrical burning, crushing pain that is listed in medical journals as one of, if not the most difficult thing for doctors to work with. And of course, it's all about the doctor, not the patient. So I tried every drug there was. And before the wreck, I had been a carpenter. And before I was officially a carpenter, I was out in California, out in San Francisco and Palo Alto with the early days of the Grateful Dead and all, you know, the early Stanford stuff that was going on. So I knew a little bit about the availability of pharmaceuticals and non-pharmaceuticals that were that might be effective with pain relief, and none of them did anything. The first 5 years, I didn't sleep in the normal sense of the term. I then learned. I was seeing a psychiatrist, and he told me that he also did hypnosis, and he would hypnotize me. And I thought, okay, what's this? You know, I don't know what this is. And he it's really funny because he took me down. He said, okay, you know, and I'm sitting in his office, and we're beginning the induction, and he's talking about going down 20 stone steps into and he's going step 1 deeper and deeper, and step 2. And I'm in my mind, I'm at the bottom of the staircase going, come on, let's go. And he finally gets down there, and he says, now we go into a cave. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a carpenter, I'm a sailor, I'm a beach person. You know, what are you taking me into a cave for? And so we go into the cave, and there's little grottos on each side, and it's barely lit, and I love sunshine. So I decided that I would just go ahead and do it my own way, regardless of what he was saying. And I was blowing holes in the walls so I could look down into a bay where I had my sailboat. And so we did that, and I left with the certainty that hypnosis didn't work. But it reminded me of my acid trips, basically, and meditation and the Om Mani Padme stuff that I had learned in part of my experiences with meditation and that. And I began developing my own thing. And within a week, I was sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night. And so for years, I just kept continuing on making up my own stuff. I had been a carpenter, as I said, and I bought a sailboat that needed to be rebuilt so that I could learn to be left-handed, because my right arm is paralyzed. And I got it up to functional sailing condition with good new sails on it and everything. And so I had to do something with it. So I went single-handing down the intercoastal and through Florida and across over into the Bahamas, and spent about 10 years on my boat, sailing up and down the East Coast and over into the Bahamas, and just enjoying sunshine and learning to be a scuba diver and things like that. And along the way, I had stopped taking drugs for the pain relief at probably in the first year, or maybe into the second at the most, because they just didn't work. I could get dumb, but you know, I didn't get quality sleep. I didn't get any real benefits from them. And so I was down in Florida here and working in a boatyard, and a lot of the guys in the boatyard would overstrain themselves and have physical issues related to their work. And they knew that I didn't take drugs at that point, and knew that I lived with some pain. They didn't know how much, but they would talk to me, and I would just tell them stories. One time we were hauling my boat, and it was the end of the day, and the guy who was running the travel lift, and the travel lift is a big crane thing that goes out over the water and lifts up a boat. Tons and tons. It's huge. It's got a big diesel engine sitting up on this metal framework, and I was sitting on top of the diesel engine while he was driving, and he was right there. He told me that his back was really bothering him. And so I started talking to him while screaming at him over the diesel engine about how interesting it was for me to watch him lift the boat, because he could adjust it, and he knew which levers to pull and how to balance the boat perfectly and bring it up, so looking at the mast and keeping that straight up so that he knew that everything inside was balanced, and driving it across the lot of the boatyard and then setting it down. And as it turned out, I had left a hard-boiled egg on one of the counters, and it was still in the same place. So this guy was really good. But I had been talking to him all along about how interesting it was that he knew how to adjust everything so that the mast was straight, and that when he set it down, it would settle down and be balanced on the blocks that they put it on, and things like that. And he finally shut down the travel lift, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, I don't know what you just did, but my back feels great." And all that I had been doing was talking to him about adjusting himself and balancing himself and taking all the pressures off of the different areas so that everything would settle into its correct position. And I said, "Well, sure, I didn't really do anything. That was all you." He says, "No, man, that was great." He said, "That's hypnosis." I said, No, there's no stone steps here. This couldn't be hypnosis. There aren't any stone steps. He says, "And you should get paid for it." And I thought, And within a week, somebody else, completely unrelated, comes up to me and says, "There's a hypnosis course that this person down in the next town was offering." So I went down and I signed up for it. And I went in our first session, we sat down, and the first induction that we learned was going down 20 stone steps. National Guild of Hypnotists. So that's how I got into it. And it was basically self-defense, learning how to separate what I feel from how I feel about it. And Phyllis, I know that with birthing, that's exactly what you do. That, that a large part of what you're doing is having the individual recognize the muscles that are moving and contracting and pushing and all the different things that they do, and allowing it to take place in its natural form without getting into the fear, expectation, reaction cycle that causes tension, and allowing it to be natural and as relaxed as the process can be. So it's interesting that you're here tonight, because that is an amazing thing. And the thing with that is that it's a natural process. Whereas most of the clients that I'm dealing with are dealing with post-trauma issues.
Mhm.
You had something to say there, Phyllis? Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate you noticing what I do. And also, we do have a real epidemic in the world today because most women think that childbirth has to be painful.
Oh, yes.
And if you think about what you just said about your language, then what they do is they use that type of incorrect language to create their own pain in which their body actually listens to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a really good opportunity. I mean, for in my experience working, I've never attended birth, but I have done prep work with people that are, you know, getting ready for childbirth, and a lot of people that are getting ready for other, you know, surgical procedures.
Mhm.
As well, but the childbirth is one of my favorites in that it's a natural phenomena. It's the body is made to do this,
Mhm.
and that it's the fear and expectation and the social hypnosis
It is hypnosis. It
that
is.
has made it the terrifying event that so many people think it is.
Mhm.
Particularly the first pregnancy.
Mhm.
I think you know better than I am that subsequent births are generally not as fearful.
Well, it depends how they started. You know?
Depends on the experience the
Yeah.
first time.
I mean, because what a woman doesn't realize is that she's actually creating the chemistry of pain in her body.
Yes.
She doesn't realize that, and no one wants to tell her. And actually, I've had OBs and midwives and labor and delivery nurses in my classes, and everything I teach them is brand new. They've gone to 7, 8, 9 years of medical school. They've gone to 20, 30 years of practical experience. And when they learn about how this works in terms of body, mind, spirit connection, they go, I've never learned that. I don't know how they could leave that out of our practice, but they do.
Well, they don't consider the body's pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
To them, pharmaceuticals are what you give to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you create in somebody. You know, it's you know, Christ's name was going to be Joe Jr. until Mary stubbed her toe on the manger. And what happens? What happens when you stub your toe? You get up in the middle of the night. I mean, you know, the Mary, that aside, you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and you're going along in the dark, half asleep, and stub your toe. What happens?
You feel it.
What does your body do?
If you're asking me, your body does what is natural. It tells you you've just hit against an object that caused pain.
Okay, and what about your shoulders and your hands?
Oh, you tense up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing with delivery.
Mm-hmm.
You tense up everywhere else, and if you forget that it's only the toe
Mm-hmm.
that is sending a signal, then the other muscles begin to break down and cause pain of their own.
Yes.
And and it kicks in the whole pharmacy. And I have spent decades not remembering the names of all the different chemicals that we manufacture.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's easy for us in hypnobirthing. We call it, we're talking about the ANS. We're talking about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic part of our nervous system, which, is easy to understand. I always say parasympathetic paradise, right? And then our sympathetic is our fight and flight response. And in hypnobirthing, we call that we call it the healing room. It's the parasympathetic and the emergency room. and is our fight and flight. And we're just making different chemistry depending on where we're at.
Right.
And so it's important. I mean, for me, talking to parents, it's important for them to know that they can actually create the same chemistry during birth as they did when they were falling in love.
Yes.
And why wouldn't they want to do that? I mean, those endorphins are what that attracted each other. And those endorphins are the same things that they'll be creating during birth. And so they go, well, how do I do that? But it's not that they have to learn how to do it. It's just that, like you were saying, Dan, they have to let the natural course of things, just like when they were falling in love.
Well, yeah, if they fell in love. But
well, we're hoping for the best here.
yeah.
Most of them have. And
most-
so they know the difference in the chemistry. In other words, we have directly, all of us as human beings have directly experienced the chemistry that you're talking about, the chemistry or the pharmaceuticals that our body's creating. And so we know the difference between being in pain because we stubbed our toe or because we've, injured ourselves, which is our body just explaining to us that something's happened, you need to pay attention. And then, or if we're creating the chemistry of pain, that's different.
Okay, and the stub toe also is, I use it as a teaching tool, that if we recognize that the toe is the only thing that hurts and that's sending all these fight or flight messages, and we recognize that it's not necessary, then we can do something. What the lesson there is that we have a really good communication system.
Yeah, we do.
And so what I want to do is help them to recognize ways to create comfort. How many people have ever seen or used an old-fashioned water pump? The old well pumps?
Yeah.
With a handle.
Mm-hmm.
And the water that comes up out of those is cold, and it just, I remember it from my childhood, and it was just the coolest thing in the world. I mean, because as a kid, here I am, pumping water up out of the ground, and there's a whole bundle of good association.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. We've got a little finger. And our little finger can be and I ask them to use their non-dominant hand, because that way the little finger on the non-dominant hand never had it never gets an important job. And now we're going to give it a really important job. And we're going to make it special. And so we can fill the little finger like a vial when we are feeling good, when we think of our children or our grandchildren, or we are out in the park one day and we see a dog rolling around in the grass and we laugh at it and think how easily amused dogs are, until we recognize that we're watching a dog rolling around in the grass and being amused. And so when we have those experiences, we put it in our little finger, and our little finger can transform that and create whatever the chemical is in our system that we need in any crisis situation. So for pain relief, if I focus on my little finger and fill it with joy and laughter and silliness, then it starts the chemical reaction through the rest of my body, which just kind of washes away painful signals. And here's another thing that I use, and I just said, I don't refer to it as your pain or my pain or things like that. It is a signal, and when it is giving us good information, it's a good idea. And when it is giving us the same old message that, in my case, it's telling me that my arm is on fire or being electrocuted or crushed or all of the above. And I've checked and it's not. And so the information is no longer valid. So I don't have to react to it. I can go from reaction to response. Here again, say, you do similar things with birthing.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, there's tension, there's the spasm that tells you to push, and yeah, you're stretching muscles more than they've ever been stretched, and there's going to be some sensation,
Mm-hmm.
and it may even be flat out uncomfortable. but
Mm-hmm.
but it is part of a natural process, and it will work the best when we go to our little finger and focus on the silliness that we store there, or the numbness, or whatever is the way that you think of it in the context of your situation. And so by using the little finger, we can direct our healing to any part of our body. I use, I mean, it's like, as I said in the beginning, I'm in this, my 46th anniversary is coming up this month. I've been doing this for a while. And most of the things that I do are, I think of as so simple that everybody should know about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I talk about the little finger, I always see people go,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and oh, you know, goodness, that okay, because we've all done stuff similar to this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do when I'm working with people, particularly with chronic conditions, is find a skill that they already have,
Mm-hmm.
and show them a way to utilize it in a different context. I had a client 25 years ago, was coming to me about weight issues, and that's a chronic condition. And she came in the second or third time that we met, and was having a bad day, you might say. This isn't going to work. I've never, it's not, you know, I haven't got any patience. We can't do this. I'm going to be this size for the rest of my life. And I said, well, okay, but you've already paid, so just sit down. And in our intake, I found she told me that she's a gardener and she loves her garden. And so I said, you told me that you were a gardener, and I'm thinking about about growing some food in my yard, because I've got a big yard and I want to grow some food because that'll be healthy. So maybe you can help me with that, and we can figure some way to help you with your thing after that. But first, just walk me through this. I said, I'm guessing you go and you buy seeds someplace, right? And you put it in the dirt and throw some water on it, and then go in the house. And when you come out in the morning, there it is. Whatever you planted, it's right there. And oh no, she told me all about this. And I said, oh my, and it weeks, months, even years for some things to grow, man, that's incredible. I said, what if you go away for a week or two and you come back and it's all overgrown? Well, you trim it back. You do. I said, uh-huh. So that takes a lot of patience, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is growing yourself and to the size, and you're trimming back the overgrown garden of your body. And this is a way that we can take their skills, their interests, and utilize them in a different context so that they become the authority and they can relate to it in the, you know, for her in that context. She found that whenever she felt that she was going beyond what she thought she was supposed to be doing, whether it physical activity or changing her diet, yada yada, whatever it was, that she could frame it in the sense of the overgrown garden and not feel bad about who she was, because most of her life she had felt that she was unattractive and all the other things that come with this, and that she was less than a wonderful person because she didn't know how to, you know, had no control or whatever it was that her thinking was at the time. But when she was able to think of it in the context of changing, of weeding her garden and trimming back the things that she cared about, then she could think of it in a much more acceptable way. And she could be creative in how she accomplished her goals. Again, I deal mostly with chronic conditions. And when we are dealing with chronic conditions, we have to remember that the people are not who they have changed who they are as a result of their condition and as a result of living with painful signals for an extended period of time. And I can tell from, you know, from my own experience that for me, there was a lot of anger and frustration, and there still is frustration, but that from being one-handed, because it's still hard to pick up the trash and take it out with one hand. Carrying the trash basket is difficult. Washing a plate is difficult. Getting, you know, putting fitted sheets on your bed is a challenge. I've learned techniques to deal with all these things, or I've learned ways to do it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still difficult.
Mhm.
And when we're working with people with chronic conditions, we have to recognize that
Mhm. Mhm.
and help them to have to recognize how amazing it is that they have figured out so many ways to have done these things. And you know, it's, as I was telling the story about my thinking in buying a boat to learn to rebuild so I could learn to be left-handed.
Mhm.
To me, that was just, okay, this is something I can do, because I knew I needed to go away and be alone while I learned how to live, because I was in such pain that I was taking it out on people a lot. And I needed to get away, and when we're working with other people with chronic conditions, they are going through similar, you know, I don't know their experience, but I know the depth of transformation in challenging experience. And so we have to speak with them and find their skills and abilities and help them to recognize those skills and abilities and utilize them in new ways so that they can get the most out of their life.
Dan, I think Phyllis had a question a minute ago. If you're at a point where you can take
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of what you're saying, Dan, is just like ringing true in the field that I work in, that but with a new perspective, because you're dealing with people with chronic pain, but we have women that are dealing with postpartum trauma, things that are happening in our world today because they're not being validated. They're not being given the attention that's needed, and they're not being given correct information. And so about 1 out of 3 women are experiencing what we call birth trauma, and 1 out of 5 fathers are experiencing birth trauma. And this is just CDC information, so it's probably more. It's more like 60% or something like that. And what's really tragic about it is that they go home and no one really helps them through this. And
No, they're supposed to tough it out.
right. And drugs don't help, and then they have difficulty with breastfeeding or raising their children, and they're kind of out there by themselves. And it's really a very important need today with our young families, because they're in the beginning of their lives as parents, and we want them to have that full life with all the skills and self-development you're talking about. So my question is, when I hear you're saying things, when going back to what you're talking about, it sounds like you're using kind of like a you help me out with the terms that you're using, and I'm just going to say what I think. So it sounds like you're kind of using a distraction technique, or maybe like a negative hypnosis technique or something with them. And then also it sounds like you're anchoring something, like you're anchoring what they can do with what they know how to do, right? And then it also sounds like you're dehypnotizing them first before you give them the correct information. And I could see where all this could work. So, I mean, we use this in our program, but I could see where we could use it for, people that have chronic pain, like with trauma. I mean, I do have women that they don't know what to do with. The first birth was so traumatic, and then they're coming and they're supposed to have this calm birth. Well, how do they deal with what they already have before they can go and have the chemistry that nature is intending for them?
Okay, dissociation, all these the terminology that we might use for techniques. What we're doing is communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And hypnotists and NLPers and all these other people have, and psychiatrists and psychologists have tried to market their approach by giving it names.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is communicating with our clients, and we're assisting them to recognize their skill and their ability. And you mentioned a woman that has had a previous birth that was difficult or trauma involved, and that could include miscarriage or any number of
many different things.
issues.
Exactly.
And how do we deal with this? I have clients come in and they tell me, that they can't go on anymore. This has been, and I say, well, and how are they ever going to get through this? And I've been working on this for years and I can't get through this, and yada, yada, yada. And I say, yeah, well, what comes to mind for me is that all this stuff you've been through, and I will go, 1, 2, 3, yeah, that and that and that and that, yeah. And you're here today because you're still interested.
Mm-hmm.
And you survived 100% of all the BS in your life. And there will only be one time when that's not true. And then it won't matter.
Yeah.
And that's the day we leave. So you are, what I want to do is help you recognize how amazing it is that you're here to, because you're still interested in life. And you are going to stick with it and find new ways. And together, we can discover ways to make that happen. The chronic identity it includes all these past events. Okay, now in the past you had a difficult birth. Let's not go into the full tilt miscarriage and things like that, but you had a difficult birth, and you learned from that. And at that time, you did or did not have a doula or a birthing coach or whatever services that they're getting this time. So you thought about it and you thought, okay, let me add this to the experience. And so what we will do is find ways to, like you say, anchor their skills and abilities. The pinky pump is, I made that up because when I was a kid, I enjoyed water out of a pump. And it was the best way I could think of, because when you have a client that comes in and tells you that they're still taking XYZ drug, and it helps a little bit, it's the only thing that helps at all, and but they're concerned about being over medicated or addicted or any of the list of side effects that are associated with it. And I said, well, but this pill works, right? Yeah, it helps a lot, but I don't want to be dependent. I said, okay. Now, when you take it, it works for like what, 3-4 hours at a time? Yeah. So an hour before you need to take another dose, when that's happening. You can feel that. Yeah. And if you're having a rough day, the closer it gets to that time, because you want to stay right on time so that you're not too dependent. I said, the closer it gets to that time, the more you're aware of the discomfort, right? Yeah. And then when the time comes, you take it. And how long does it take to begin to feel better? Invariably 5 minutes. And I said, well, your body hasn't digested it in that time. So what you're doing is the expectation of feeling good. And your body knows how to access that, and knows how to create the chemical that this drug is supposed to stimulate, because the drug is stimulating your pharmacy to create the effect that you want. So let's learn how to enhance that to the point that you can create that on your own. Or to intensify the effect of a drug, so you can take a smaller dosage. Because when people recognize something as simple as, well, yeah, I take the pill, and within 5 or 10 minutes at the most, I can feel a real relief. And you say, well, you haven't digested it yet. And that is a big learning thing for them. Yeah, okay. So now we know that your body can manufacture this. Now let's learn how to activate it without through the expectation without having to have the pill. Thoughts, ideas? I see some nods. Or is that people falling asleep?
We want to welcome Jennifer. She came on a little bit late, but we'll definitely get you the replay. And she's in Australia, just so you know. We did intros earlier. So,
are you on a BPI group?
a what?
I'm involved with TBPI, traumatic brachial plexus injury.
Oh,
And
No,
one of them's in Australia.
that's not associated with IACT or IMDHA or anything, right?
No, they're not hypnotists.
Oh.
They're people that have brachial plexus injuries, and it's very difficult for me because when I had my wreck, and I call it a wreck, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. It was 1978. There was no internet. There were no groups like this. The doctors that were just barely knew what a brachial plexus avulsion was, and even to this day, I don't think most doctors even those who treat it, comprehend what is going on in the person's life, how devastating it can be. And it's, Phyllis, it's like the women you're talking about. You just go home and tough it out with your postpartum issues and things.
Dan, isn't that kind of true for in the medical field for almost any chronic condition? I mean, they really don't have
the follow-up is difficult. And I think that when I was teaching at the medical conferences, it was always really interesting that our classrooms were always full. Quick note on that. Myself and this buddy of mine, Michael Elner, were teaching at a medical conference, and we had 4 one-hour classes the first day of the first time we were doing this conference. And it was a big deal. And this is a major medical conference called Pain Week. And they had sought us out. When they were interviewing me before the conference when they were deciding to bring us in, I had just made my little book. Let me see if I can get it out here. Changing Pain. No longer in print. But it's a guidebook that I put together for my chronic pain clients. And I showed it to them, and they said, and I showed them a mock-up of the book, not a professional printed job. I had made it in my office, and I showed it to him. He looked at it, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and he looked at it, and he said, "Okay, we'll take 1,000."
Oh.
And they put them in the swag bags for all the doctors. That order paid for the printing. I hadn't printed them yet. The first day we did 4 one-hour classes, and at the end of the day they came over and asked us to do all 4 again the next day, because people were talking about it and wanted to, and a lot of people hadn't gotten in. So from that point on, we did it for 7 years. And the first year we were going around after our classes, and in the main exhibit hall and in the hallways of the conference itself. I'm sure most everybody here has been at the hypno conferences. It's one of those times 10 or 20. There are like 2,000 people in this place, 1,500 anyway. And they would come up, and as with hypnosis, a lot of the people that were specializing in pain relief, or in, as they would call it, management, were doing so because of personal experience. And so they would come up and they'd say, you know, I've got this ache and pain, and I'd laugh and I'd say, oh, let me show you a trick, and I'd, you know, do a hand drop induction or something like that, and conversational hypnosis, and send them on their way. And they go, what just happened? The second year, they gave us a breakout room and Saturday afternoon, never written down anywhere, word of mouth, because we can't practice medicine. We had a breakout room, and 30 or 40 people at least would show up, and just whoever, you know, they would say, I've got this, and I okay, come up, sit down, and we do demos, 5 minutes per person, basically. And we do it for a couple of hours. And we had people come back the year after and for several years saying that they were stunned because it still worked, whatever it was that we had done. There were a lot of people who our classes got out of hand. I remember the last couple of years, they would leave the doors to our rooms open so that people could sit out in the hallway. And these were rooms that seat 150 people, you know. I mean, they were, the doctors do much nicer conferences than hypnotists. Fancier hotels and all that. And they paid our transportation and hotel and gave us a check on top of it all. It was great. Who's dealing with chronic issue themselves? Anybody? Yeah, okay.
Judy?
¿Qué pasa, Judy?
Yeah, I have something going on my low back, and I have like really, really bad leg pain. It's not sciatica, it goes down the front of the leg, like you have shin splints. I've had it for a couple of years.
Okay, and it's related to your mobility?
I limp. I had an MRI and everything. The medical world cleared me. They don't really understand how come I have so much pain. But they say it comes from my low back and travels down my leg.
And what do you do about it?
Right now I've done chiropractic, I've done hypnosis, I'm in acupuncture right now.
Okay, when you say you've done hypnosis, what do you do with hypnosis?
I've done a lot of the tapping, I've done a lot of the emotional work that that goes with the hypnosis. I've done the discomfort relief. I just haven't had really any relief with anything. I'm having a little bit of success with the acupuncture,
Okay.
but not, it doesn't last for more than a day or two.
Okay, well, I'm hearing really good things. When I was talking about being in the boatyard and working with this buddy of mine, I was sitting on top of a diesel engine that's roaring. I mean, this is not your hypnosis room. Yeah, screaming stuff. You know, it's really cool the way you can align the mast. When I was talking about that, I noticed you nodding. Yeah, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're dealing with is alignment, isn't it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's been going on for a couple of years. So you've developed habits
Right.
that ensure by protecting yourself, you're guaranteeing yourself. One of the things that I like to do for myself, because here again, I'm carrying around this weight of my right arm and shoulder, and it affects my spine because it's like carrying a 20-pound bag all the time, because I can't move it at all. It hangs. Because I'm too lazy to use splints and, you know, all the crap that they wanted me to use. We very often look to fix broken things
Mm-hmm.
in ourselves. And one of the things that I find is that for myself and many of my clients, that not getting into the fix issue allows my body to return to its natural state. So with the spine and your hips, which is what you're talking about,
Right.
if I were going to do something myself, I would wonder about maybe allowing my jaw to relax or my hands,
Okay.
and get into your hands or some area of your body that's not affected,
Mm-hmm.
and celebrate that area,
Okay.
and go there, and you can do it. I mean, even now, just sitting there, you can begin to feel that when you focus on your hands, you talk about learning to let go. Hands are really good for that.
Mm-hmm.
And when they are in tune with each other, then everything else will want to be in balance. So rather than getting into the either or of fix or repair, is this working? You celebrate an area that is working
Okay.
as the model child.
Okay.
You know, this is what I want to feel like.
Right. 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 Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it takes you out of pass fail.
Okay.
And another thing that's related to that, especially with chronic issues, is that people come in and I say to them, you know, tell me what your situation, and they start to tell me, and I say, and I listen. And you know that when you're listening to a client come in and they begin to tell you their story, that at some point you can hear the recording start,
Mm-hmm.
where they're telling you something that they've practiced saying
Right.
many times in their own mind, so they could explain it to somebody else how bad they feel.
Mm-hmm.
that you can tell when they're in recording mode. And when they hit that, I say, okay, we'll get back to that. But first, there's a couple of things I want to ask you. If I could guarantee you, 100% guarantee, 100% guarantee that today in this office, in the next 35 or 40 minutes, whatever we have together, if I could guarantee you 100% relief, how would that be?
It would be magnificent.
And you wouldn't believe it if I could, because you've been at this for 2 years or more,
Mm-hmm.
and you've gone in with the expectation of fix or repair,
Right,
and it hasn't worked.
right.
Okay, 100%. I've seen it happen, but probably not today. How about if I could guarantee you 50% relief? Would that still be, could you find a benefit in your life with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so 50%. Maybe you'd be able to feel the balance come back to your step,
Mm-hmm.
if only for a block or so as you walk.
Right.
Not doing marathons yet, but you know, how about 25%? What could you do with 25% relief that you don't feel comfortable doing now?
I would sleep. I would
Ah,
sleep better.
oh, that's an important one.
Yeah.
So even with 25%, you could find sleep come more easily.
Right.
Okay. So what I want to do is find the level of relief that you can, the smallest level of relief that you can recognize as a benefit. And put it in your little finger. Because if you can get 10 or 15% and notice it, and
Right.
get it just by pumping your little pinky pump, or some other routine that we agree on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, think of your, I don't know if you have children or grandchildren or any of that. You have grandchildren?
I have one little grandbaby.
Okay. Grandchildren are the coolest thing in the world, because you don't have to put up with them all the time. Your children may have been challenging and all that, but grandchildren have a free ticket. And you see the smile? Grandchildren are a great resource. Put that in your little finger.
Okay.
Because when you think about your grandchildren and you pump that little finger right now as you're doing that, you notice that the rest of your hand knows about the grandchildren and touching their hair and all those sweetness and all that stuff that way out of my sphere, but you know it. And you notice that in your hand. And you can spread that to the other hand, just as a way to practice. Maybe up through the shoulders and across to the other hand. Or if you believe in energy in the center of your palms, you could put your palms a couple of feet apart and feel that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And feel that the love and all that emotion of grandchildren or whatever makes you happiest. It could be the taste of fresh orange juice. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you can put that in there and begin to feel that through your hands. And notice that when you do that, what else changes? For me, my breathing changes, because I'm focused now.
Right.
I'm focused on what it is that I want to include in my life. And that second or third breath, I begin to notice it spreading through my body, because when I take that second or third breath after beginning to feel this, I now have more oxygen in my blood. And my blood is bringing more oxygen. Oxygen relaxes the muscles and balances our whole system. So
Okay.
just thinking about your grandchildren or whatever it is that tickles your fancy, so to speak, begins to change your whole physiology. And you can use it as a pattern interrupt to
Okay.
change the way that you get in and out of bed. So that when you get in and out of bed, you begin to reestablish that firm footing
Okay.
that you've been missing for so long now. And it'll be kind of interesting to notice how it feels even now with just a few moments of nonsense talk that I've been blathering on about.
Okay, so the pain in my leg is gone. And I was really, really struggling before we started this. I mean, I was trying to massage it out and it wasn't working, but the pain is gone from my leg.
Okay. And you didn't tell it to go away, did you?
No.
Okay. So this is when we put our mind where we want it to be, everything else takes care of itself.
Wow. Great.
You know, and take this moment that when you just said wow, take that and put that in your little finger. Take that when you say wow, there's a breath thing that's connected to that word, which is why people say wow. You know, see, I need a word to express this air, this it's wow is an expression, and it changes our physiology. You know, and here again, when we step away from either or measuring our success and look for what it is that we actually want rather than what we don't want.
Right.
You know, it's either one of the things that another one of the things that I often talk with my clients about is this wall and that wall. You're in a room, and doesn't matter which one, but one wall is all the things you want, and the other wall is all the things you don't want.
Right.
Now, the wall that has the stuff that you don't want, you can go all the way around the world to get away from it. And you come up on the other side, put your nose against the backside of it, and you're a measurable distance from the things you don't want. The wall with the things you want, you can walk over and enjoy.
Okay.
So when we are in our either or mode of fixing ourselves or working with our clients, going for what they want rather than what they don't want is going to be more effective.
Okay.
You know, because they come in and they say, what do you want? I don't want to be in pain. Okay, well, that's what you don't want. What do you want? I don't want to hurt. Well, that's what you don't want. What do you want? You want to feel better. Yeah. Okay, so here's the 10% solution. How much better do you need to feel right now to think that, wow, you know, and it doesn't have to be a lot because when we go, okay, I can recognize 10 or 15% as a wow. And if I just let going back to the stub toe, if I just let the rest of my muscles relax, then I'm going to get more than that 10 or 15%. I'm going to get 30% because everything else has been tight in reaction to these signals that I didn't want to begin with. So just relaxing them, I get 30%. And I had gone through this and recognized in myself that 15 or 20% would be great. And here I am sitting in this silly chair and I got 30 or 40 or more. And I haven't done a damn thing. Wow. So that's some of my thoughts.
Well, Dan, we've gone over, and I don't think anybody minds one bit, including me.
And
But
Dan, I still have your little red book of changing pain. I still have that from so many years ago.
That is, well, it's a, yeah.
collector's item. I have at least 2 or 3 of them, I think.
Well, you've got
Because
more
we-
than I do.
It's a collector's item at this point. Maybe we can.
Yes.
I am planning on putting it out as an ebook.
There you go.
Because I think, because the intent of it when I first put it out was that it would fit in your back pocket or in a purse and wouldn't get in the way of anything. And so you could take it with you wherever you're going. You sit in the park, open it up randomly and read a page and go, oh, okay, I remember that. 10% solution. That's a good idea. Pinky pump. Okay, I know that. Gardening. They're all in the book. And so the intent of it was portability. And now I'm hoping to get it worked out so that you can download it to your phone.
Wow.
So
I know, Jen, you weren't here for the whole thing, but this is just a taste of what this. Can you just imagine 5 Wednesdays, an hour and a half, 9 to 10:30 in the evening. 5 Wednesdays beginning April 17th. I will be hosting and moderating, I guess you'd call it. And I jumped into this with Dan mainly because I want to be there as well. Because I've learned so much from him. And, sometimes we just need to be reminded about how powerful all of this is. Even those of us that have been in this field for a long time, it's nice to just get back to the basics. And one thing I think Dan is great at is simplifying things. If it can be simpler, why not make it simpler? When we teach hypnosis, yes, we teach techniques and we teach language and all these things. Those are tools, but it really is, like he said, it's communication. It's about how can you really listen to the person and communicate and tap into what they already have and they bring to it and teach them how to do it for themselves. But to go back and just keep reminding ourselves, sometimes it takes a reminder for our clients too of how they have the ability to do these things. So keep in mind that class. I've got a registration form on my website at uphypnosis.com. If you send that in, I send it directly to Dan, and I know he's going to be very hands-on with this class. He's very involved. You can tell he's got his heart and soul in this, and his body, of course, as well. So he's really dedicated to helping people. And I guarantee you, if you called him on the phone with a question, he will spend as much time as you need or want to help you to understand these things and to develop further whatever skill that he's able to introduce you to during this training. So anything else you want to say about the class? Because we do need to wrap it up here.
All that we do should be conversational.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm working with a client and I get the 10% solution and stuff like that, I say, okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's play with your imagination. Now, what happens when I say that?
It's fun. It's
Okay, and we're not going into pass fail. Is this going to work?
Right.
Because we're not going to address my issue. We're going to do something before we address my issue. We're going to do whatever it is that he's talking about now. And so I'm not on guard. I'm not protecting my chronic issue. I'm being curious about what's next. And so that gives me the opportunity to do all the same things that I would do if we were doing a formal trance without doing a formal trance.
Right.
And suddenly, you look at your hand and my foot feels better, my leg feels better, my hand, and all I did was look at my hand or play with the energy between my hands. We never went to the area
Right.
that you've had that in the past was an issue. So when you go to sleep tonight, when you go to bed, play with your little finger.
Mm.
Maybe it can sing you a lullaby. Oh, it could sing a lullaby to your grandchild
Yeah.
Mhm.
on the ether.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Again, just a taste of what's available here. And there's always so much more to get into. And this class is for anybody. It's not just for practitioners or hypnotists or people in the medical professions. It's also for people just with chronic pain. They will benefit from this, right?
Yeah. And my website is danclearyhypnosis.com.
Yeah.
Very, very complicated.
Do you want to give them your email address as well?
Nah, it's on the website.
Okay, there you go.
Hypnosis.
Dan Cleary, hypnosis.com. All right, we're going to wrap it up now then. Thank you all for being here.
Okay.
If you would like to see the replay, I love to rewatch these. I love editing them because I pick up things that I was there for, but somehow I missed it or it didn't quite sink in the same way, So it's nice to have these available. It will be on the internet. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next
Okay.
time. Take
And-
care.
Okay.